Frank Lee Morris, fugitive. San Francisco. This talks about communications to different offices, I guess, of the FBI about Frank Morris, and it says right here that one of them was Tampa. Okay? That was on June the 15th, and I'm telling you that he attacked me in Tampa in 1962-63, right after the escape from Alcatraz. Him and the Anglin brothers down there at 6 Mile Creek. I'll put you a link up here so that you can look at that. Okay, here's a description on these guys. Clarence Anglin, born in Ruskin, Florida, which I'm telling you and have told you before is 20 miles south of Tampa, where I was born and lived, and where I met these guys more than once when they were playing murderers. He had a tattoo of Sona on his left wrist and Nita on his right forearm, and I have told you before that I spoke to him about that in Mexico City because he still had those tattoos, and I asked him what they stood for, and he looked at John, and John looked at Frank, and Frank looked at me and just waved his hand like, don't pay any attention to him. And they didn't say anything, and I looked back at them and I go, well, so what's it about? And Clarence looked at me like they were going to start a fight with me, so I just left. Now, John Anglin, born Ruskin, Florida, 20 miles south of Tampa, where I was born, and then it describes what he looks like, some scars and everything, which I don't recall because I didn't look. Frank Lee Morris. He had a tattoo of a star on each knee, a 7/11 on his left knee, and a devil's head on the upper right arm. I think it was actually on his shoulder. He showed it to me one day, tried to rub it into my face, and even tried to tell me that he was the devil reincarnated. But he beat around the bush about it. He wasn't real clear. The tattoos on his knee I had completely forgotten about, but one day he was all excited and he actually pulled his pants up above his knees and showed me those tattoos and told me to remember them. And I think that's why I forgot them, because I didn't really care. Star base of left thumb and number 13 at the base of the left index finger. Frank had those tattoos taken off. He told me, and he showed me the scars back in about 1970 or 71 in Mexico City. And here it says, again, subjects are all convicted bank robbers and should be considered extremely dangerous. The myth about a toy gun that was used to rob a bank, that toy gun was never produced at trial. And the bank official says it was a real gun. And the Anglin brothers claim that it was a toy gun, okay? And that makes sense. That's the kind of thing Frank would recommend for them to do. That way they have the protection of a real gun, but yet they have the lie that they can use to protect them later when they get to court. If you look and pay attention to what I'm showing you here, you'll see that these guys have been arrested for robbing multiple banks in multiple places in different states. Okay? They didn't just get caught playing with a toy gun out in front of a bank in Columbia, Georgia, or wherever it was. Now, this is about Frank Morris. It says here they're going to get something from someone that they're going to contact about Morris, but they blank out her name. And then down here it says correction on line 13 should be Ethel, and line, 16, I guess, word 2 should be Joe. So I'm thinking Ethel Joe might have something to do with his mother's name, or someone that he knew that might have been a place where he might go to land and cool down while he was looking for another place to move along in his activities. And if I knew what state that was in, you'll probably find that there were some murders in that area around that time. Some unsolved murders that resemble Zodiac killer murders. Now here is a whole page on all of the different charges against Frank Morris. Angola, 3-year term for burglary. Rayford, breaking and entering, escape, all of this, and it tells the dates, and those dates come in around the dates that I saw him in Florida and places like that. Possession of narcotics, armed robbery. I mean, this guy wasn't, he was not a hero. burglary, solitary confinement. 1956, escape, charged with attempted escape. Now, here is something that I want you to look at carefully. Something about his association with someone that they don't tell you who it is, but it says that person knows Morris to be erratic, potentially violent, daring, and capable of any crime. Any crime includes murder. Okay? Now, I know you guys saw the Escape from Alcatraz movie with Clint Eastwood playing the part of Frank Morris. Clint Eastwood was a great actor. Yes, he was a hero. I thought he was the greatest since way back in the days of Rowdy Yates and Rawhide. But Clint Eastwood was not Frank Morris, okay? He was portraying him, and they don't always portray people in movies to be what they were really like. I mean, he was the hero of the movie, okay? But in real life, it's not so heroic to murder people, at least not in my opinion. Now, remember, we're going through the FBI files here, and you can find these files on the internet. Just type in FBI files on Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers. Something about his only living relative is an aunt who resided in somewhere that they don't want you to know, but then it says something about the Charlotte division. So I'm thinking this is North Carolina, because there were some unsolved murders in that area, and a couple of them that he sent letters, including one of a little girl about 14 years old who was really butchered and slaughtered and left in an abandoned building. And he bragged about that being a masterpiece. Frank Morris was born on 9/1/1926, just so you'll know his birthday, in Gallagher Hospital, Washington, D.C. That's where he's from. They put his father's name here and the mother's name here, but they won't let you see it. And he was first incarcerated in 1940 in the National Training School for Boys based on commitment by District of Columbia Juvenile Court, sentenced to 6 years, 9 months, 18 days, subsequently violated parole and was remanded to Federal Reformatory in Chillicothe, Ohio. That was in 1943. And this is his record around the mid-50s. You can read it. It's all about the different things he was charged with, and it gives you the dates, and there's some escapes in there. I think it'll show you that this guy was not exactly a hero, a very dangerous man. Frank Lee Morris escaped from Louisiana State Penitentiary in Angola. He was serving a 10-year sentence for possession of narcotics and armed robbery. He was arrested in Terrebonne Parish in Houma, Louisiana in 1956. And something about bank burglary in New Orleans in the Bank of Slidell. This guy robbed banks everywhere he went. He was not a nice person. And here's a little story about the escapees said they were going to cross Raccoon Strait to effect an escape through Marin County. And there is a video on YouTube right now where the guard who was on the boat that found their raft states that he found it at Raccoon Strait. Now, I don't believe these guys made it to Raccoon Strait because the tide was going the wrong way at the time. I believe that it took them out to Marin County or out to past the bridge to a park there, and then they got a ride and took their raft back up to Raccoon Strait. And they took the guy with them that ended up, his body floated up in the bay. They took him up there with them, probably dead and probably laying in the raft, and the raft was in the back of maybe a station wagon or something, and that's where he bled out at. And that's why when they found the raincoat raft that these guys made, it was full of blood. And they left it there just to mislead the authorities, because from there they probably booked to Florida. There's more descriptions of these guys. But again, subjects should be considered armed and dangerous. All subjects are convicted bank robbers and should be considered extremely dangerous. Now, this is something else I wanted to show you. Frank Lee Morris. These are some of his aliases. I'm going to go over this with you really good, okay? Carl Cecil Clark, Frank Laney, Frank Morris, Frank Laney, Frank Lyons. Frank asked me what I thought of the name Frank Lyons, or the name Frank William Lyons, and I thought, yeah, it's a pretty neat sounding name. And my dad's first and middle name was Frank William, and that really impressed and Frankie Lyons, and the Stanley O'Neill Singletary thing. He asked me what I thought of the name Stanley Singletary. And I remember him saying O'Neill, and I go, that's a lot of names, you know, and he took that out and he said, well, forget the O'Neill, how about Stanley Singletary? And I said, yeah, it sounds like maybe the name of an English teacher or something. And he said, yeah, that's what I thought. Now, here's another good one. Red something, I can't read it. But there was a letter called the Red Phantom letter that was sent to the press. Didn't look like it was written by him, but the things he said looked like it could have been written by him. And I think there may be some relationship there. And he used the name Red because he liked to see blood all over the place. He told me that. Okay, now, I hope I haven't been too obsessive with you about this guy. Frank Morris, Zodiac killer. I knew them both. I hope this helps you understand this guy and gives you a clearer picture of what actually happened with these guys, because I don't like the fact that the world is living in a mystery when I know the truth and the solution. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm going to prepare another video for you on some other things that I've remembered about these guys here recently.